Victor Neustroev, and thank you for joining to my webinar. Today we are going to talk about how to attack the enemy king. So the webinar is devoted how to lure the enemy king into the open space where you can successfully analyze it, where you can successfully attack it, sorry. Okay, so before we start, please let me know if the sound and video quality is good. I'm also streaming this webinar on my YouTube channel. If, for example, you experience any problems with watching this webinar on Twitch, you can always watch it on YouTube. I'm going to share the link. Okay, hi everyone. We have just a few attendees, so we are waiting for more, and in a few minutes we're about to start. Is everything fine with the with my internet connection, the video and audio qualities? So yeah, I am on Twitch. I'm everywhere on YouTube. You can find my account on chess.com, LeeChess, Chessable, and of course the chessworld.com, and even on my own website. So I'm everywhere. Okay, fine. So if the sound is good, let's start. What does it mean? What does it mean luring the king into the open? It means that you are trying to get rid of the enemy pawn cover, or you are trying to attack the king so that he goes forward, he goes to the center and leaves his pawn cover. Usually, to apply such a tactical strike, you have to sacrifice something. That's why every time you should calculate the line properly to be able to do it. So maybe it's too complicated when I'm trying to explain. Let's just look at this example and you will realize that it's actually not so difficult. Okay, look at this position and tell me what white may do in this position. How to lure the enemy king and then take the advantage of it. So if you were white, how would you play here? Who knows? Bishop h6. No, of course bishop h6. Yeah, just a sec. So of course bishop h6 allows us to attract the king to this position. But what then? How to continue? What other move we can play? We can probably take on f7, but how to continue? Nobody knows. Let's say he plays queen e6. and then there is not much that we can do. So I can make the moves on the board if you want. So then let's say queen f7, queen e6. So check, but the king goes back, and that bishop sacrifice didn't make sense. So okay, so what is my favorite opening? My favorite opening is Count Sicilian with black pieces, and I've already published a course on Chessable devoted to it. So here, the other move that you may consider is knight f6. What does knight f6 do? It delivers a fork, first of all. Knight f6 forks these two pieces. What to analyze? Queen takes f3, but if queen takes f3 after knight f6, knight captures rook, and this is a check. We gain the rook, and then we can successfully take the enemy queen and just get an extra rook. That's why after knight f6, we can only analyze king f6, otherwise they lose the material. What do you think? Knight f6, king takes f6. How to continue to be able either to checkmate or to gain the material? What do you think? Any suggestions are welcome, even if you think it's a mistake. Okay, so there is a good question. How and when to sacrifice a piece to win? Actually, I have a YouTube video devoted to this exact idea. So how to sacrifice. I'm going to provide you with the link. So this is the link to the video. And okay, while I'm waiting for your suggestions, I will try to answer this question and tell you the basis. So when you are looking when and how to sacrifice the piece, you should understand that the position is sharp enough and it contains a tactical strike. Then you should be looking for forcing moves, especially sacrifices. But with this sacrifice, you should understand that you get any benefit, and sacrifice only in the case that you believe you can gain the material back, or you checkmate, or the last thing is that you are sure that this sacrifice makes sense and you have such a strong initiative that you are likely to at least continue the attack. But if you see that your opponent can successfully defend his position for 5 or 6 moves and then you can't calculate the line deeper to make sure that you win, then you'd better avoid the sacrifice or calculate it better or improve or just play another candidate move. Okay, so here you suggested knight f6, king takes f6, and then you said rook d6. However, after rook d6, I believe the king escapes to g7, and that's it. The other suggestion was bishop g5, but what's the point? Just still king g7, and what's then? Still nothing. So the idea of knight f6, king takes f6, is to lure the king to f6, to be able to play bishop e5 after that, which is a double check. The king on f6 is attacked twice, with our queen and with the bishop from e5, what means that they have to take the bishop. Now the king is lured to e5. How to take the advantage of the king in the center? It's easy. You just capture on e4, king takes on e4, and then you realize, actually you realize it before, that his king and his rook are on the same file. So just rook e1 delivers a check, king goes out, maybe f5, maybe f4, d5, doesn't matter. But after we capture the rook on e8, we deliver a fork on these two bishops. One of them is lost, and this is how white gets extra exchange. Okay, let me now show everything on the board. Bishop e5, double check. King takes, then we take. He has to take with the king, and after rook e1 he has to move the king. It doesn't really matter where he moves it. After rook e8 we deliver a fork, and one of these two bishops is lost. In the game, actually this is the game between Anatoly Karpov and Vasilin Topalov. Black played bishop e6, rook takes f8, bishop takes a2, and after rook c8 with the idea of rook c7, black resigned. So just such a simple fork could lure the enemy king, and white could take the advantage of the king being in the center. They couldn't checkmate, but they could win the material. How did I realize that such a tactical motive can be applied? First of all, I realized that knight f6 is a fork, and this square is only protected with the king, and if only I play such a move, the king gets into a discovered attack. I can't play any discovered attack, but I can play a double attack, either bishop e5 or bishop g5. And the only other thing is that two bishops are located on the back rank, and if only we get the rook to e8 or d8, we can fork them and probably gain of one of them for free. And then I found knight f6, bishop f5, and queen takes e4 combination. Okay, I'm sure you know what actually luring means. I tried to explain it, but I am absolutely sure that most of you are familiar with this game, the game between Edward Lasker and George Thomas. However, let me show it. It's a really brilliant game, so even if you don't know it, it's good to know. d4 f5, knight f3 e6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5. This is Dutch defense, and white played knight c3. Usually the pawn is on c4 here, but actually you can play anything you want, and the most solid strategy, actually, guys, if you play it, is to play g3, bishop g2. So bishop e7, and white decided to take on f6. They traded the bishop for a knight, which is actually not in their favor, but because of it they could occupy the center. That's why they played e4. F takes e4, knight takes e4, attacking the bishop. Retreating with the bishop was good, but black played b6, which is also okay. Bishop d3, bishop b7. So, but you may look at these pieces, they are totally focused on the king side attack, especially on the h7 square. Knight e5 was played to open the queen. So queen h5 now is a check, a threat, because after g6 knight takes and the rook is hanging on it. Actually it's not, but anyway it's dangerous. For example, we are threatening with queen h5, g6, knight g6, h takes g6, queen takes g6, and we are double attacking the bishop on f6, so we are able to gain the minor piece back. But black, of course, castled. Now queen h5. And this is where black played a mistake. They played queen e7 move. By the first glance, there is nothing wrong. The idea is that if white wants to attack on h7, they are likely to play knight f6 to open up the bishop. But after g takes f6, the queen joins the defense of the h7 square. So black considered it's fine. What did black miss, and how white can take the advantage of their kingside activity? What do you think? If you don't know this game, please just calculate and suggest the move. If you guys watched this game before, just tell me what was the next move that Lasker played. Bishop g7? What do you mean bishop g7? No, knight g6, h takes g6, queen takes g6. I don't think it works. Then maybe queen f7 just. Okay, parallax 2000 is of course correct. Here we should lure the enemy king by sacrificing the queen, but we should do it only in case if we calculated the line to the very end. Otherwise we lose the queen and don't get enough compensation and lose the game after that. So queen h7. So I'll make the move on the board, and I want you to continue this combination. How to checkmate black king. What is our next move? Yeah, of course, knight f6 looks like the most promisable move. Why this? Because after king h8 we can checkmate with knight g6. It's a double check, so the king has to move. It goes to h6. How to continue then? Actually, this line was not so difficult to calculate, because every time white played a move, they left black with only one option to play. And now knight eg4. Again, the king has the only square on g5. What then? You mean h4? That's right, h4 check. Again, only one option, to f4. Now, I believe the next move, you know which to do. It's g3. Finally, the king gets to f3. And this is where you can checkmate the king in 3 moves. So I want you to find this combination. What do you think? Bishop e4, but bishop e4, bishop takes bishop. If you play such a move, then they take your bishop with their bishop. Okay. Yeah, guys, so parallax is again correct. Here we should continue with bishop e2. King goes to g2. Then rook h2, and after king g1 we have 2 options. To play king d2 just, which will be a checkmate, or castle queenside. So can you imagine that you can castle and deliver a checkmate at the same time? All these moves were calculated by Lasker before he decided to sacrifice the queen, of course. Okay, so some of you also said about this move, but after king e2, what exactly to play? I still believe it's a winning position. Maybe you can continue with king e2 check and then rook a to g1, which will be checkmate. Yeah, it's still a winning position, but it's longer. Bishop e2, and after this rook h2 delivers a mate, and not bishop f1. Another way to deliver a checkmate in this position is to play knight e3, letting them to capture there, after which you move the king, or you move, doesn't matter, you castle, for example, king h2, knight f to g4, he goes there, and then you checkmate with this move. The only way to block this check is bishop g2, and then we take, and this is a checkmate. So knight e3 is another option, but of course playing rook h2 is much faster. So let's go back to the beginning of this combination. So queen e7, it was much better to capture on e5 to avoid these complications. Without this knight the combination wouldn't work, but with the knight it works perfectly. So here, how did white realize that this is a time for to be looking for a sacrifice? He came up to this solution when he realized that he has the material advantage on a certain side of the board. Finally, all of his pieces joined the combination, including these two pawns, while these two are not participating in the game anymore, and even the queen and the enemy rook were unable to join the defense, even despite of the fact that they were located quite close to the king. So when you have the material advantage on the king side, you may be looking for a sacrifice. It's unlikely to be a queen sacrifice. Usually we sacrifice a minor piece, or maybe the exchange, sometimes the rook, and almost never the queen. I sacrificed the queen for a few times. Once it wasn't accepted, so it's up to you. But usually the queen sacrifice works quite rare. Okay, so here it did. We forced the king to get to the open, and after that we chased the king and finally delivered the checkmate with our other rook by playing king d2 or by castling. Okay, there is one more game that I would like, actually there are several games I would like to demonstrate today. For example, this Wilhelm Steinitz was playing against Hewitt. I don't know his name. It was a weird opening, but the opening is not our topic today. e4, e5, bishop c4, f5. f5 is actually a weird move. Nowadays it's played almost never. d3, knight f6, knight e2, bishop c5. So c3 with the idea of playing d4. And one of the best options here was to take, of course. I don't understand why Steinitz didn't take. Maybe he didn't like something, maybe in this position. No, actually, I like this position. There is nothing to discuss. Maybe maybe in this position he didn't like queen d5 move. But if after queen d5 we can still play bishop f2, king f1 for example, and knight d6, protecting there. And then for example here black is still one pawn up, which is better for black. Of course they are not developed, but it's better for black. Okay, fine. So Lasker, not Lasker, but Steinitz played knight c6. Okay, there is a good note that here knight d6, we have no time to capture on c4. They take here instead of king. Here, yes, we can capture. That's why first this move. Yeah, then king goes to e8, then king f2, knight c4. The number of pieces is equal, but we are one pawn up. However, we can successfully block the e file with d6 and knight e5. Let's just go back. Knight c6, d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, we black gains the pawn. So I'm not going to analyze this game in details, but I would like to show how black successfully applied their attack. Bishop f4 d5, bishop b5, take there, castle, the queen was hanging, that's why they took. Queen a4, bishop d7, black is better anyway, because of better development in the strong pawn center. Bishop g5, queen e8, queen b3, knight to g4, attacking on f2, bishop h4, and e3, opening the position. If maybe f3, then knight could go to e5. But they castled. Queen h5, attacking the bishop, bishop goes there. Then e2, chasing the rook, rook moves. And then we play rook f2, because if the bishop takes, then queen h2, it's a checkmate. They played knight to d2. Double the rooks, c4. And in this position, I wanted to find the way how to lure the enemy king and then checkmate. Who can tell me which combination black may apply to be able to win this game? Okay, guys, I'm waiting for your suggestions. By the way, if you have any questions, you can also ask them. And when only we have some pauses, I will try to answer. Okay, there are two suggestions, rook g2 and knight h2. Okay, guys, please calculate both options. One of them is this, the other one is knight h2. Queen g5. I believe almost any move here is good, but queen g5, what's the idea? They can probably play knight f3. Knight f3, rook takes f3. G takes f3, knight takes h2. No, then f takes g4. No. Queen g5 is not a good idea. Let's calculate rook g2 together. Rook g2. Okay, I can help you and make this move on the board. Rook g2, king g2. He has to take. If he doesn't, then we take on h2, bishop h2, queen h2 mate. So king takes. How to continue then? What do you think? Then rook f2. Rook f2, bishop f2. I believe queen h2, this is what you mean. But king goes to f3. And then? Ah, you take there. And this is a checkmate. Okay, so actually you're right. The rook f2 works. I'll show you. Rook f2. So if he goes to g1, then probably queen h3. No defense of the g2 square. If he takes, it's a checkmate with queen h2. But if he takes, it's a checkmate. King has to go to f3, but then queen f2, and the knight is protected. So this is a checkmate as well. However, Steinitz played in this position queen h3. And of course he calculated the line. Of course, if king h1, then a rook f2 and threatening a checkmate on g2. Same thing happens in case of king g1. Rook f2 with a checkmate on g2 on the next move. So they took knight e3, discovered check, king h4, knight g2, king goes there. And now I want you to find the checkmate in 3 moves. What do you think? How to deliver a checkmate in 3 moves? Well, these are our classical games. Well, the first one between Karpov and Topalov wasn't, of course. I believe it was quite modern. So h6, if king g6, bishop e8, and if king h5, h6. Okay, I am just following your suggestion. h6, if king is there, this is a mate. If king goes there, then rook g5, rook f5, I mean, then rook g5 is not a mate, he escapes there. So looks like not. Okay, rook f5 is the best move, and after king g4, h5. He has to go to h3, which is the only spot. And then I discovered the tap, and at the same time we protect our knight on g2 with the rook, and the game is over. So Steinitz won with a checkmate. Let's look at this combination one more time. So here he sacrificed the rook. You see, he has a material advantage on that side of the board. Moreover, the bishop is also looking at this side. So all his pieces are involved. Which pieces defend the position? Only the bishop and the g and maybe the h pawn. And that's it. Rook g2, sacrificing the rook to open up the king. Queen h3. Now this is how he lures the enemy king to h3. Then knight a3, king h4, knight g2, another good move. The king now goes to g5, which is now the king gets in an open position. Then we can play h6, we can play rook f5, everything can be done. He goes there, then h5. The pawn joins the attack. The only piece that didn't... actually all our pieces participated in the attack. Okay, fine. Let's now analyze something more modern. This is the game played by Vadim Zvyagantsev as black. d4 e6, knight f3 d5, c4 knight f6, knight c3 c6. So it's semi-Slav defense, and this is where white decided to play anti-Maron variation. Okay, before we continue with this game, let me answer the last question. After queen h3, can the king retreat? Yes, he could. He could retreat here or there, but every time he could do it, we play rook f2, and if bishop takes f2, queen h2 is a checkmate. If the bishop doesn't take, then queen g2 will be played on the next move. And after king h3, knight e3, there is no escape square. Okay, hope it's clear. Let's continue with this game. I play bishop d6 in this position, which is anti-Maron variation. Then if bishop d3, I take there, castle, and play e5. And if you want to play like I do, you can find this variation explained in my course devoted to semi-Slav defense. But black played b6, which is also a typical strategy of playing this opening, but is not considered as good as I recommend and I play myself. Moreover, b6, bishop b7 is too boring. e4, d takes e4. Oh, black are trying to play for to equalize the position. Knight c3 and c5. Oh, they almost equalized. d5, e takes d5. C takes d5, a6 to stop knight b5 coming, knight h4, threatening with this. That's why g6, bishop h6, rook e8, queen d2, bishop d6, g3, b5 to gain the space on the queen side, bishop f3, b4. Now the knight has to retreat, and the next move is knight e4. With the tempo, if bishop takes, the pawn on d5 becomes weaker. Queen c2, supporting with the other knight, knight g2, queen d7, with the intention of moving the queen to h3. Knight e3, rook a d8, and bishop g2 is the main mistake. After which black was able to apply a tactical strike. What was that strike? I want you to find it. Yeah, hello everyone who joined us recently. Today's webinar is devoted to how to lure the enemy king into the open. And I'm FIDE Master Viktor Neustroyev. So, what tactical strike? Knight f2? No, yes, you should calculate knight f2. So I think after knight f2 they have to take with the king, otherwise their position is almost losing. Guys, any other suggestions instead of knight f2? Who can suggest anything else? No? Okay. Yeah, you are actually right. It's knight f2. What happens then? King takes. Here, black sacrificed almost all their pieces to be able to lure the enemy king from his pawn cover. Rook takes e3. Now he has two options: to capture with the bishop, to capture with the king. If, for example, king takes, then it's knight g4, king retreats, and knight h6, where black has a compensation for the exchange they sacrifice. So they have a bishop plus pawn for the rook, but because of the king's weakness, their position is better. But white took with the bishop. They were thinking it's better and it's safer. Knight g4. If he goes there, then knight e3, and we also gain the rook. Yeah, that's why king f3. Knight h2. King goes back, knight g4, king f3. How would you play in this position? What do you think? If you're black, how would you play on the next move? Knight e5. Or queen e6. Okay, so as for knight e5, I think it just goes best and the back, and the best thing we can do is just to repeat the position. No, knight e3, king e3, and how to continue the attack then? Queen e6, which is a good move, threatening to take on e3 as well as on d5 with the bishop. The pawn is pinned. So bishop f4 was played in the game. What else could be done? For example, I don't know, queen b3. Is it a possible move? Of course not, because we are threatening to take there, and to be able to do it, we can play queen c4. Now the queen is under attack, and if the queen takes on c4, then queen e3 leads to a checkmate. Here just... no, bishop c8, he has to sacrifice the queen, otherwise it will be a checkmate. So it's difficult to suggest anything. They played bishop f4. And the next move... okay, let's go back. So same thing happens in case of queen d3. For example, queen d3 here. Queen d3, knight e5. Even better. So bishop f4 was played. What is your next move, guys? Please try to find it. Bishop takes f4, but bishop takes f4. Knight takes f4 maybe. Okay, bishop f4 is actually a good suggestion. Bishop takes d5. No, bishop takes d5, I don't like it, because then he can block with the queen on e4. Then I don't know how to continue. As for what else did you suggest before? Bishop takes bishop. Then he can still play queen e4. I am sure that the position is in your favor. Let's say king takes e4. Then you can just retreat with the bishop and threaten with a lot of threats, including maybe take and play f5. So it's in your favor. But no, there was even a better move played. Queen e3 doesn't make sense. Rook e8 right now. With such a move, we are threatening with a checkmate, which finally was applied. What's actually the point of knight f2 fork? Then yes, in that position it was a fork, right? So rook e8, queen c4, and then we are able to deliver a checkmate with queen e3 move. Bishop has to take on e3, then rook takes e3, king g4. How would you continue in this position? What do you think? So you're right, it's bishop c8. Bishop c8 first. h5 is not required right now. King goes where? If king goes to h4, then bishop e7, and that's it. It's a checkmate. So king goes to g5, because if now bishop e7, he escapes to f4 or h6. How to play after king g5? What do you think? King g7. King g7 is a nice move, but I don't think it works. We sacrificed a lot of pieces. So, for example, king g7, and they can, let's say, play maybe queen g4 to be able to escape there, and bishop e7, king f4. So he sacrifices the queen to be able to avoid the checkmate. Rook g3, knight g3, no. King g7, no. Guys, it's h6. If he goes there, bishop e7 is a mate. He has to take. But after he takes, what is our last move? Who can guess? No, come on. I'm sure you can find the next move. It's just one step left. Of course, the checkmate will be delivered in two moves, but after this step, it's easy to find that after rook e5, the king doesn't escape anywhere, and rook h5 for bishop f8 is a checkmate. So he can defend only against one of these mates. For example, he can play queen c5 to prevent us from playing bishop f8, but we checkmate with rook h5 in such a case. He can play knight f4, but bishop f8 is still a checkmate. So with rook e5 we are threatening with both mates, and there is no defense against both of them simultaneously, only against one of them. Okay, so let's look at this position again, where black applied a tactical strike. So here again, all of their pieces are into the attack, while just a few are defending. Maybe these two knights, the pawn and the bishop. That's why we may consider a sacrifice, but this sacrifice should be well calculated. Rook a3, bishop takes a3, knight g4. take the pawn back to make g3 weakness, and then join the queen. At the same time, keep the protection of the g4 knight. Okay, so in which moment you mean white can play g4? So here knight g4, king f3, queen e6. Now they have to solve the problem with the bishop being hanging and with bishop d5 as a checkmate. So bishop f4, but rook e8, threatening with queen e3. And as well as bishop d5. Bishop d5 also leads to a checkmate. For example, if you think that, okay, why did they allowed black to play queen e3? Okay, let's say they play queen c1 to protect on e3. In such a case, queen e4 is a mate, as well as queen e2. Okay, let's say rook d3. Rook d3, still queen e4 is a mate. No, yeah, queen e4 is still a mate. King g4, bishop c8, king h g5, queen f5, queen h5 then. That should be a mate. So it's difficult to suggest any other move here. So that's why black could sacrifice all his army but still checkmate with just a few pieces. And in this position, if g4 protecting there, bishop f8 is still a mate. So two mating threats simultaneously. Okay, fine. So we have another position to analyze. It's black to move, and now I want you to find what black should do. What is the best decision for black? What should they do with the enemy king here? And don't forget that they are pawn down. I want you to gain the material here. If you can checkmate, fine, let's checkmate, but at least you should gain the material. So what do you think? What ideas we should be looking for in this exact position? Rook a d8. Okay, as for rook a d8, what if he does king g1 move? Well, you're thinking, I'll show you. So yes, if after this move, let's say something like that, then we can capture bishop d5, rook a7, and gain a piece with bishop h1. But of course, they can just play king g1 move, so that there is no check with this bishop. Queen g5, this is how we could continue to attack on d5 one more time, but c4, then bishop d5, we take, and it's not a winning position. Okay, so while you are calculating bishop h3 here, okay, I can make the move on the board. Bishop h3, if king g1, this is a mate, so they have to play bishop g2. While you are calculating this line, let me answer the question. Okay, the question is, if in any position both the players have completed the development and have no attack. In such a case, if I do not want to go to the endgame, what shall I do then? It's a good question, but nobody forces you to get to the endgame immediately after you develop the pieces. And I actually also don't want to play the endgames. I can play endgames if I believe they are more in my favor. What should you do? You should come up with a plan. With a plan which improves your position or which may worsen the enemy position. If you don't know the plan, you should either improve your worst piece or disrupt the enemy plan, especially if you think it's quite dangerous. At least do it. As for the plans, of course, there are a lot of middle game plans that you should learn. So they are not only attacking plans. You can create weaknesses into their camp. You can create a distant passed pawn to attract enemy pieces. You can change the pawn structure and play against isolated pawn, or have the isolated pawn and compensate it with your piece's activity. So all these plans you should know. But the most common plans are creating weaknesses into the enemy camp to attack them later. By weaknesses, I mean weak squares that you can occupy with your pieces, and this is how you improve your pieces, or weak pawns that can be attacked and are hardly defended. I actually have a course devoted to how to find a game plan where I explain several different plans. So today there will be almost no promotion from my side. So if you have any specific questions, you can email me at tricksofchess@gmail.com, and I'll answer in more details. But you are welcome to ask almost any questions here. Okay, so let's get back to this position. Bishop h3, bishop g2, and yes, we here take on e1. The king has to take, and with bishop g2 we attack the rook. If only we take the rook for free, we have extra material, that's enough to win. So let's say they move the rook, but then rook e8. With such a move, we force the king to get to the center, to the open space. King d2 and rook a d8. Unfortunately for white, they can't capture the bishop. If they take there, it's a check and we save our bishop. We are a minor piece up. If they don't do this, we take on d4 with a check. So probably c3, rook d4, c takes d4, and bishop escapes. We are absolutely winning here. So the idea of this position was not to get the king to the corner, to g1 where it blocks the rook, but forces the king to escape to e2 and to d2 to be able to take advantage of the enemy king and queen being on the same file. So that we play rook d8 and gain the queen back. Okay, and now the most complicated position taken from the game between Konstantin Lander and a friend of mine, Sergei Yudin. The game ended in a draw, but white was absolutely winning. What do you think? It's white to move. What white should do to be able to lure the enemy king? Then either chase it or gain the material or anything. What do you think? What do you suggest? Is Sergei Yudin Jewish? No, I don't think so. I think he is Russian. Why are you asking such questions? No? He is a Russian living in Novosibirsk as I live. No, actually, it's a common Russian family name, so he is not Jewish. But I don't think, even if he was Jewish, he was still, no, and he is still a good chess player. Jewish or not, I don't care about it. Okay, so bishop e7. Yeah, bishop e7 and knight c6 doesn't work, of course. Bishop e7, rook e7, knight c6 because of queen c5 check. And then white has to retreat. No. F5. That was the idea, the f7 square. So what to play? If they ignore, white takes on the next move and gets a strong advantage. Actually, before playing f5, you should look at this position and understand something about the material balance. What? Black has extra exchange, but white has definitely compensation, and I believe here white is playing for a win. Their pieces allocated much better. f5. So e takes f5, otherwise the pawn dies there. And of course not e takes f5, because if e takes f5, then queen b4 to secure the c4 square, I'll tell you. So bishop f7 was played by Konstantin Landa, and after king takes f7, queen c4. Now the king can't get back to his pawn cover. And if, for example, white decided to play safely and, for example, prepare it with e takes f5, then after queen b4, bishop f7, king f7, and queen c4 no longer would work because of queen takes c4. So from b4, the enemy queen supports the c4 square. So bishop f7, he has to take, otherwise he loses the exchange back, plus white position is positionally better. King takes f7, queen c4, and then the king has to move to f6 or g6. Here white is down a rook, but if only they gain a minor piece back, they will be definitely better, even if they wouldn't be able to find a mating attack. So two moves. Let's start with king g6. How would you play in such a case? This is not a good move, actually. Now, knight d5, this is what I told you. After e takes d5, we gain a piece, then we're threatening to take on c6. White is just down the exchange, but with a strong attack. So king g6, how to continue? What do you think? There should be something simple. E takes f5. Oh, I think e takes f5 works as well, actually. But there is a much better move, much simpler and better move that gives you a clearly winning position. No, not rook d3, guys. It's not knight e6, it's just bishop e7. So bishop e7, rook takes e7, and knight c6. Why knight c6? Because now two pieces are hanging, they have to move their queen back. And then I'll show you what happens. But what if, for example, they take on e4 with the idea that if white takes, black takes there, and the material is equal. If so, then rook d6 first. King, if something blocks on e6, we take it. King h5, and after queen f7, we save our queen, and take the enemy queen for free for a knight. If they go there, then queen c1 does the same thing. Our queen escapes, but the enemy queen is still hanging. So queen has to go to c7, rook d6, and now the king goes here or there. So for example, if he goes there, we can play queen e2. I can show you. For example, king h5, queen e2. Then what? If there, then g3. If there, then queen h5 mate. So let's say king g5 right now. Then h4 he has to take. If he goes to f4, then queen f3 is a mate. So that's why he has to take on h4. Queen f. I think it's easy to play g3 in this position. g3, what now? If he takes, it's a rook goes back. No, maybe it's not easy. Okay, instead of g3, let's play queen f2 just. King h5. Yeah, it's easy. King h5 and queen f5 now. Or if king g5, then still queen a5. He goes there, but now g3, he takes, and now we checkmate with our rook. Rook h3. Actually, it's easy to realize that the checkmate exists until we see that the queen joins the attack. If king g5, then queen joins the attack from c1. What to play? If only he goes there, then queen d1, and we come closer. If f4, then h4. If he doesn't take, then queen d1. If he takes, then there will be a similar checkmate. So king g4, queen d1, king h4, rook d5, threatening with rook h5. He has to secure it, probably with this move, but then just queen e1 or queen f3. Queen f3, let's say, threatening with queen h3. And he has to stop queen h3 as well as queen f4. For example, if he does queen c8 to stop h3, we take on f4. There is no other move but to block, and this position is winning. They have to give up the queen, and that's it. So I recommend you calculate such long and complicated lines. But if you are an experienced player, then you shouldn't. You should just realize that if you are able to join the queen to the attack, you have enough material resources to be able to finish the attack with a checkmate. For me, for example, it's obvious. I just need to understand that after rook d6, king goes there or there. So I have either these or these moves, and then he goes to the attack. The queen joins the attack, and the king will be checkmated. Okay, so this is what happens in case if king goes to g6. In the game, the king went to f6, and this is where Konstantin Landa made a mistake. They played a few moves. No, not a few moves. They played a lot of moves, and then the game ended in a draw. But he missed a clearly winning situation. What do you think White should play in this position to be able to win? Okay, so you asked me about Karakin and Svildler. I believe that Karakin is a better player. However, Nepomniachtchi is the best Russian player nowadays. And the second one, I believe, is Grishuk. If it was Garry Kasparov playing, of course, maybe he was the best between Russian players. Okay, so in the game, Konstantin Landa played e5, and it was a mistake. The game ended in a draw. Oh, king escapes to g6. Now, what? How to join the pieces to the attack? Black can always play h6 and escape. That's why I want you to find something else. Yeah, so it's bishop e5. Bishop e5 is a better move. Bishop e5, so what then? Nah, g4 is too slow, it should be a check. So first of all, what if he takes? If he takes, we play knight f3. Now two options. If he goes there, we checkmate with rook d6. Sorry, like that, with queen e6. If he goes there, we checkmate with e5. He goes to e3, and then queen d4, king e2, queen d3 is a mate. So he can't capture that bishop. He has only king g6 or king g5, which is almost the same. King g5 is not so good because it allows us to play knight f3 with a check. For example, then king h5. If king goes there, then rook d6. If king h6, we can even deliver a check and then jump to g5 with a checkmate. Oh, for example, king h6, rook d6, g6 with the pawn, queen c1, and queen jumps to g5. If king h5 in this position, then this is the best move. Yeah, it takes f5, and after knight takes f5, we play g4, take there, and then checkmate with the queen and rook d6. For example, g4, king g6, g takes f5, he takes, and then queen f4, or queen f7 is actually slightly better. He goes somewhere here or here, but gets rook d4 every time. So, oh, actually, in this case, queen f4 is a mate. In this case, we should play this move first, and then checkmate with queen h5, let's say. So moving the king to g5 was a mistake. He'd better move the king to g6. Again, it didn't happen in the game. Because Konstantin Landa didn't notice bishop e5. What to play in this position? There are two good moves, two good continuations. Please find them. Pawn takes, check, and knight f3. Actually, why not? Why not? Pawn takes, if knight takes, then maybe knight takes knight. Another thing that can be played here is knight c6. Attacking. Here, then what? If rook d8, then we probably take there and play queen g4. Maybe take the after queen g4 we protect the rook and can successfully capture the queen. So, and if knight takes c6, we can deliver a nice checkmate. If king h5, it's queen e2 with the same idea, but if king g5, I'll show you. Queen c1, king h5, queen d1. If king h4, just g3. If king g5, it's h 4, king h4, g3, and after he goes to h3, we checkmate on h5. If he goes to g5, we checkmate with bishop f4. Okay, a good question. What if here, for example, they block with their rook? Then we take, they take, we take with the queen, king somewhere escapes, we take there. If it goes there, bishop g3 is a mate. If he blocks here, then this is a checkmate. Of course, you may say, he can escape to f7, but come on, guys, this is a winning position. At least we can equalize the material and then continue the attack. But I believe there will be a checkmate in a few moves. So knight c6, that was a good move, which delivers an obvious winning attack for white. But another thing that could be played is e takes f5. Knight takes f5, knight takes f5. Well, if now he takes there, it should be what? Queen f7. Yeah, let's calculate. Queen f4, and after he goes there, it's rook d6, king e7, queen g5. Yeah, that leads to a checkmate. I can show you like that. And if he goes to g6, it's queen g4 and queen g7 on the next move, what also leads to a checkmate together with rook d6. Well, king f5 doesn't work. Rook f5 was another possible move, but then still rook d6. If knight e6. Well, okay, first of all, if king takes there, then we checkmate with our queen, queen f7. If king e4, it's queen f3 mate. If king g5, then h4, and we join our queen to the attack. I'll show you like that. King h5, take there, and in this position we can deliver a line mate quickly. Knight e6 is the strongest move, after which we take, and in this position we are able to checkmate only with two pieces, with the queen and the knight on f5. King g5. What do you think? How to continue now? We have just two pieces left. We can also join the pawns to the attack, but how? What should we do? h4. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you guys. h4. What then? If king goes there, it's knight g7. He has only one square to take. Then queen f6, king g4, queen f5, and then it's a checkmate with queen h5 or queen f4. If he doesn't take, if he goes there, then g3, the other pawn, king goes there, queen e4. If this move, then g4, king g6, queen e6. If king h3, then check. He goes there, knight e3, he goes there, queen f3, he goes to the, then queen f5 and knight g4 anyway. So he goes there, it's queen f5 and knight g4 is a mate. If he goes to h6 directly, then queen f4 first, and then queen f5, knight g4, regardless of what he does. So guys, you see, it's a long combination where we have to chase the king, but actually white could avoid it if only they found that knight c6 wins the game as well. Knight c6 is simpler and easy to calculate. So maybe white didn't have enough time and couldn't calculate it. But both moves were winning, but knight c6 contained just a few moves to calculate. Okay, so what you could learn from this webinar, that it's very common when you can lure the enemy king into the open. After that, you can chase the king, apply a tactical strike, or even and gain the material back, or even deliver a checkmate. Another thing that you should remember, that all these sacrifices should be well calculated, because if you sacrifice something but then your attack fails, you are down the material, and if then he simplifies, you lose the game immediately. So that's why calculate before you sacrifice. And maybe you'd better avoid complicated variations. But something like that, for example, like bishop h3 that happened in this game, this is what you can definitely find. I'm not sure if you are able to calculate maybe 20 moves like in the game between Landa and Yudin, but 5 or 6, why not? And if you struggle with calculation and visualization, you know, I have recorded a course devoted to it. Okay, now a minute of a self-promotion, and I'll also answer the question about the webinars. Okay, so this is my chess.com profile. You can send me a friend request. And then you can also join our educational tricks of chess group. And almost all the recordings of the previous webinars are here. For example, this is webinar 95. The webinar 94 you are looking at is here. You can click there and watch the video. And this is the link to the club, so please join. What else? My YouTube channel, of course. I can send you the link. I can find it here. So this is the link to my YouTube channel, and finally my website, tricksofchess.teachable.com. This is my the most recent course devoted on calculation. If you are interested of how to improve it, you can enroll into. Also the blog where I publish interesting new videos and articles. For example, there was a good articles of how to solve puzzles to become a better player. Moreover, there you can find 10 tips for self-studying chess. This is my book that I've written recently. I can also send you the link. Okay, fine. So now you know where to find the webinars. Do you have any questions? Okay, let me answer. Would you ever consider lesson on Fischer chess 960 variation? It's difficult to teach, but you can follow the basic principles, which are harmonical development of all your pieces. All of them should be active, and of course you shouldn't forget about the center. So the main task in Fisher Chess is to join all minor pieces into their game. Don't forget, don't block anything. But I didn't teach it, I just played it from time to time. Okay guys, I think it's clear. So any other questions? And maybe we will run a simul soon. The book about Philidor defense. Not sure about the translation of this book. Maybe there will be no translation. It will be only in Russian. But no, right now, no. Could I recommend any books for chess players below 1800? Of course. Just any book. And actually, I recommend you doing puzzles. As for the books, so for example, there is such a book, Garry Kasparov Teaches Chess. You can search it on the internet. There are also some Russian books, but I'm not sure if they are translated. Some Russian and Soviet books. Okay. As for the book about Philidor defense, it's called Philidor defense and Offstein attack. Okay. Defense and Offstein attack. And the Russian name of it is Защита. Wait, sorry. Защита Филидора и атака Offsteina. So maybe you can find it somewhere in online shops. I have only a printed version. I have a few printed versions, so you can contact me directly. So guys, if any questions, you can message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. So this is my email. If I don't answer immediately, I'll definitely answer next day. Okay, so I hope to see you again on my next webinar next Sunday. Bye bye.